Hi everyone, welcome back. We are live again here at Detroit KubeCon 2022. Believe it or not, I was looking at the statistics and analytics from yesterday. We had over 11,000 folks joining in watching us yesterday. And if you watched us yesterday or the day before, we hope you enjoyed our coverage, trying to give you a little flavor of what's going on here. So continuing and wrapping up, our final day, our first guest today is Mike Turnlin from DataCore. Hey, Mike, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
It's a pleasure to have you on here. So, Mike, I guess I feel obligated. I don't know if everyone out here knows DataCore.
So
let's start there.
DataCore is a pioneer in software-defined storage. The company itself has been around for 20 plus years. Our chief product has been Sans Symphony, which I think a lot of people are very familiar with.
They may know that more than DataCore.
Right, so we are that. We've also picked up, but the company's chosen to modernize the portfolio. So we're sticking with Sans Symphony, great stuff, but rather than turn that into a container store or some sort of object, S3 object thing, DataCore has acquired Coringo in the last couple of years, now has the Swarm product for S3 type object storage, and then a year ago, they had made a majority investment 2 years ago in Maya Data, who does all of the OpenEBS work and is the proctors for OpenEBS, and pulled them in for specifically containerized storage. So they're taking a very new strategy for DataCore by going open source first for introducing our software. We've got some good drivers for full-featured for some of the older Kubernetes environments. What I'm really here to talk about today is MayaStore, which is our NVMe over Fabric specialized block storage, right? So we're able to run, what does it do and why do you care, right? You can run it, basically you can run your block storage at native NVMe IO speeds. So rather than being throttled by the classic SATA protocols, so it's the older SSD protocols, they would give you a little under a gigabit a second.
Right.
We're now able to run at 5 gigabits a second for reads and about half of that for writes. In a container native environment, blah, 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 Kubernetes, the point is you've got a microservices environment where you can get line speed IO.
I love it.
So what does that mean? It means your latency goes down.
Yep.
And our customers are seeing it. We're seeing it around different databases. We're seeing it around different just bare metal deployments and service providers. We're very easy to provision, easy to use. We run behind the Kubernetes control plane. So you're using classic Kubernetes tools to provision us. You don't need to learn something new. You can use what already is, and we purposely want to be a best fit utility for Kubernetes environments. And it's working. We've got other customers here at the trade show. I'll put in a plug for Sivo. If you're here on the floor, please go talk to them. They're running us in their backbone. It's going well.
Great.
We've done some benchmarking against our largest competitors. Not going to name them, but I think we can figure out who they are. We're able to get, we did some testing with just a very large database, MongoDB. We were able to get about 2.5 times the performance of our biggest competitor. So as IO has been a constraint, our value proposition is taking away that constraint.
Got it.
Really a simple story, a very effective story. It's a very robust set of software. We're actually pleased to see the stability we've got. Very few events, I'll call them, and we haven't seen an event in quite a few months now. So things are going well.
Good. I want to jump in on this in a second, but I feel like I neglected. What's your role with DataCore?
So I run field operations for DataCore. I'm an old tech vet, been around a long time. Friend of mine was talking to me about DataCore, and I was really, or actually the OpenEBS and then the DataCore, the technology really attracted me. I've been part of several tech revolutions in semiconductors and networking, and I looked at this and thought, holy smoke, we can take out about 80% of the IO latency. Yeah, that's worth doing. I'll go play with that, and I'll go work on that. So that's why I'm here.
Absolutely, and thank you. What's interesting, like you, I've been around the block a little bit myself, and I've seen several waves, right? You would think a company like DataCore, 20, 25 years old, they see a new wave, they see some new technology, and what they try to do is take their existing technology and maybe shift and lift, right?
They
But
looked
you
at
guys
that.
didn't.
No. They looked at that, and
Yeah.
then they realized that they needed something that
This
was
is
purpose-built.
truly new, right? You
Right.
need something built for this
But what
cloud native.
One of the things that's attracted me to DataCore is some of the talent they have, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so our chief scientist, Nick Connolly, has just been a joy to work with. And he's one of the people who saw, wait a minute, we really need to do this differently than we were doing with Sand Symphony or Swarm. We need to do something new. And he's been very instrumental in helping steer the OpenEBS, the open source code, to where it needs to be. He's been in storage for a long time. And when Nick smiles, you know things are going well.
Good, man. Yeah, no, it's all
uh,
good. You know what? But there's a business case to be made too about. You got a company like DataCore. 20 years ago, they weren't using open source, pretty much, right?
Right.
To make that switch, because my 2 cents, it's open source that powers this whole. These people can't see because they're only seeing this.
Yeah.
But there's a big show floor out here. 100+ companies, I bet. 7,000 people here, 11,000 people online. Open source is kind of the energy source.
Right.
For
and
this
so
whole
both
thing.
both our chief product officer, Abhijit Day, and our CEO, Dave Zabrowski, have both seen that, embraced that, and so we're taking a very different tack.
It is. And
Yeah,
kudos to
yeah.
DataCore for doing that, right? Because sometimes old dogs have to learn new tricks.
And these guys are doing it well. So it's
Absolutely.
been really fun to work.
Very cool. And it's good to see because, one of the things is you look out here and look, a lot of the names on these booths, they're not 25 years old.
No, not at all.
Some of them you may or may not have heard from before, or who knows in 3 years. DataCore is a company that'll be here. And so seeing, an old guard company adopting this new technology, more than adopting, embracing,
Right.
innovating, that bodes well, I think, for the whole movement, if you will.
Right. Yeah. So we're driving with that, right?
Yeah,
And it's been the nice part about having a little gray hair is people have seen these
It's not
problems
having hair at
before.
all, but go ahead.
No, but you've got people who have seen this stuff before, and so I was sitting down with one of our SEs from Germany, and we were looking at a problem one of the customers was having, and they're implementing our stuff, and he's kind of just sitting and looking at it for a minute. I just left him alone because I knew there was a lot going on in there, and he just pointed at it. It turned out to be a problem in their infrastructure we were able to help him with.
Right.
And Alex just said, hey, look, this is, let's try this. And it worked.
Good for them.
So it's there's a lot to that, just that depth of experience and being able to translate that to the next environment.
Absolutely. Hey, you know what? Time goes quick. I want to make sure we get it out to the people watching.
Yeah.
If they want to find out more about DataCore's offering here in Cloud Native, these different offerings and open source, where do they go?
Please come to the DataCore website.
Datacore.com?
Datacore.com. You can go to openebs.io. We're
Do that
maintaining
open like boy, ebs.io.
Oh, correct. And that
Okay.
is the open source environment. If you're curious about our code, especially Mayastore, we're posted on GitHub in the open source environment under Mayastore at GitHub, under CStore, under all of the OpenEBS umbrella at GitHub. So if you want to check it out, please try it. Give me a call. If you are having problems deploying, we're happy to coach you through it. We do have an online presence for the open source community that's free of charge.
Cool.
But we also have product offerings that, as you want to deploy this in enterprise and you want commercial level support, we have productized that and we do that for you.
That's a great thing, man. Hey, we fit a lot into 15 minutes, huh?
We did.
Pretty good, Mike. I appreciate it. Best of luck with DataCore.
Thank you very much.
I mean, this is a great story.
No, this is fun. This fires
No,
me.
but it's also a really good story. This is a company that's rolling with it, right? And relishing it. So continued success and keep us posted.
Thank you.
Datacore.com. We're live in Detroit. We're going to be back with our next guest in just a moment. Hi, everyone. We're back here live in Detroit for KubeCon, day 3 of our coverage from the show floor. And I'm really happy to be joined by our next guest. His name is Alex Jones. Alex is with Canonical. Most of you know who Canonical is, but for those who don't, they are probably best known as the people behind Ubuntu, one of the most popular Linux desktops in the world. Or Linux distributions, I think, is better.
Right.
I'm always thinking Linux
A
desktop.
stickler for nomenclature there, yeah.
Well, a little bit, sorry, but Linux distributions in the world. Alex, welcome to Techstrong TV. Thanks for being here. Before we jump into the whole Canonical and Ubuntu and all of that, a little bit, who's Alex Jones for our audience?
Sure. So I'm from London, UK, 2 kids. I work at Canonical for about a year now. I'm an engineering director there. I focus on Kubernetes, but a lot of my story is in the open source world. And that's really where that intersection of, hey, this is a company that I like because they do a lot of open source work.
Yes.
So I work in the CNCF. I'm a tech delivery lead for app delivery, which is one of the working groups that helps companies that want to bring their open source into the CNCF figure out how to do that.
Great.
Aside from that, I'm also doing a lot of advisory work, and so it was a really good match when Canonical said, hey, we really want to take our Kubernetes offering to the next level. We need somebody to help lead that, and so I found myself doing that, and that's why I'm here today.
Great, I love it. So, let's talk about the Canonical Kubernetes offerings, right? One of the great things about Linux distributions, and again, our audience is technical, I don't have to tell them this, but you know, what packages does it come with by default? What packages are available? And obviously, as Kube and containers became, this whole cloud native stack, if you will, as they became more prevalent, all of the Linux distros were saying, okay, we need to ship native with Kube and what have you. If you can, and I don't know if you even know this, but could you give us a history maybe of Canonical's Kubernetes involvement there?
Yeah, I think that it started with the realization that Ubuntu is being used for about 63% of all Kubernetes distributions in the world.
Almost 2/3.
Yeah, as the host OS, and that's pretty staggering, right?
Yeah, it is.
But the other way to look at that is it's an incredible responsibility, because that's on a knife edge. Right? You know how fickle the community can be. If something doesn't work, they're going to get rid of it, right?
Yep.
So we thought, how do we double down and really capitalize on this? So we looked to the folks that are using it, the hyperscalers, the companies that started out thinking, we love Ubuntu, 20.04, like Focal and beyond. How do we take that and actually start to make it run really well? So we start building out partnerships. We started saying, look, we have lots of different types of Ubuntu. We can slimline it. We can turn on kernel modules for you. We can do whatever you need. And those partnerships became more substantial over time. They started going back and forth, and we actually had some quite deep engineering conversations. And around about that time, we also started experimenting with, well, let's look at what Kubernetes looks like in the Ubuntu ecosystem. And you might have heard that Snap is one of our sort of jewels in our crown of what we think it makes a really good way of delivering open source projects. For those of you who may not be familiar, it's a little bit like apt, right? Except for Snap runs on a daemon, it was auto-updating. So I go snap install something, snap install, Chromium, etc. How do we fit that in with this Kubernetes idea that Kubernetes is multi-node, ability to bring up clusters? Well, being Canonical, our job is to simplify things, right? Everything's complicated out there. We make our sort of value prop in that area of let's make it simple. So micro-K8s came about. It was the idea of how do you create a single binary of Kubernetes and make it installable, just like a web browser, right? I want to have a Kubernetes, I want to get rid of a Kubernetes. And micro-K8s absolutely took off. Around about the same time, there was also the Juju project at Canonical. And Juju was standing up OpenStack, standing up VMs, standing up whatnot. And it kind of went 2 and 2 with like, hey, we've got micro-K8s, that's been a roaring success. We feel like we could also do something with Juju to stand up Kubernetes. And lo and behold, we put our first distribution out of Kubernetes, I think it was around 1.16, maybe 1.18, prior to my time. And there was a real appetite to manage not only OpenStack, not only Kubernetes, but Kubernetes on OpenStack with Ubuntu. And so you're starting to build this ecosystem that you can control from sysadmins who are super familiar with OpenStack. They know Cinder, they know Neutron, they know how all the parts work. And they now feel comfortable that hey, I know how Kubernetes can be deployed on top of this. And we're not only upgrading their technology, we're upgrading how they feel about it as well. And so we were introducing that new angle of folks into this Kubernetes world.
Love it. Excellent. You mentioned platform. One of the kind of buzzwords we're starting to hear more of is platform engineers.
Right.
Platform engineering. It's a new buzzword maybe, but I don't think it's a new role, quite frankly. But that's me, I'm old. What is Canonical, Ubuntu, are you guys kind of embracing this new role, or at least, not a new role, but this new, we have SREs, but to me they were ops people. Platform engineers are sort of ops people too, but what do you think about all of that?
That's my take on it. Well, I mean, really, Kubernetes is Linux, right? If you think about it, a lot of the drivers are just changing the IP tables, right? So, yeah, I think platform engineer kind of is cut from the same cloth of, it's a way of describing a context boundary of what are the things you care about. I'm a person that cares about the platform, and that domain boundary has a lot of stuff inside of it.
Yep.
I think it's the gradual inflation of your domain scope, because a platform engineer could now be observability. It could also be it could be the day one, day two. Mm-hmm. We all know that sysadmins have gone out of favor now, but we still do a lot of the day two operations, upgrades, updates. But no, that's now platform engineering.
Right.
I think the term has been reinvented because with the reinvention of the title, we're also trying to reinvent the practice.
Yeah.
So that's my feeling on this.
Excellent. All right. So I think we've done a great job of laying this all out. Let's talk now about what, here at KubeCon, news from Canonical, or
right.
Tell us.
We're super excited because we have a couple of key things that we wanted to bring to KubeCon. One of which is called strict confinement. I told you about snaps. I told you about apps. I compared them. Snaps is basically a process that runs. It does the updates on your packages. But there's also something else that snaps can do. They have app armor profiles around them. So when I install, say, Firefox, Chromium in a strictly confined snap, it's sandboxed. You can't get out of that, right? So let's think about applying that to Kubernetes with micro-K8s. What if I took Kubernetes in a snap and put app armor around it? You see 1,500 security companies all trying to solve the problem of container escapes. What happens if somebody mounts the sys folder or mounts the proc directory from their pod? Well, with strict confinement, that means that as soon as you try and hit the Linux kernel, it says, no, I don't think so. It gives you a denied exception. So what's really interesting here is when you're combining those technologies, AppArmor and SE Linux have been around a while, but when you bring it into that modern context, like I was saying with IP tables, you're suddenly able to solve a modern problem that's been created from container orchestration with traditional tooling. So strict confinement's interesting, but the secondary impact of that is Ubuntu Core, our immutable operating system, only runs with strict confinement. Ubuntu Core is for cars, it's for factories, it's for IoT. So now when we have a strictly confined micro-K8s and Ubuntu Core, we have Kubernetes in cars. We now have folks in automotive, folks in energy at base stations for telco who want Kubernetes strictly confined. They can't afford to be even stressing about somebody who could jump out of their container. They need an immutable operating system. They need real-time kernel as well. Who has a stronger kernel story than Ubuntu? And I think there are maybe, I can't think of anybody, but I would say that, right? But jokes aside, it's like this narrative is all coming together. All the chapters of the book are coming together to build a story that's really compelling. So that's our first message. And if I have time, I'll say the second.
Take your time. I don't see anyone else waiting.
All right, well, that's awesome. So the second part of this kind of reinvigoration of all of our products is that we're shifting to solutions, right? We're solutioning for business problems. As part of that, I mentioned Juju. We also acknowledge not everybody in the world uses Juju, right? There are people that might use other provisioning and deployment tools. So therefore, we took a look at Kubernetes, we took a look at CNCF, and we realized that Cluster API is an extremely powerful tool. And so we have partnered with several different vendors to build Cluster API, but also to bring it into their tooling. So we built a provider for micro-K8s, and we're building one for charmed K8s, which is our other distribution of Kubernetes. Now what that means is, suddenly partners who say, oh, we only do CAPI, they're like, oh, Canonical do Cluster API, we can show them in our UI, we can provision their clusters. So if you were a shop that until now was doing just a traditional vanilla Kubernetes on AWS, on Oracle Cloud, etc., you now have the choice to pick micro-K8s. You now have the choice to pick charmed K8s as well. And what that does is it gets Ubuntu onto those clouds. And with Ubuntu come the snaps that run these and the upgrade story.
The whole story.
Yeah.
Excellent. Hey, we are running low on time. You know, here's an important kind of thing we should all be mindful of. The CNCF is part of the Linux Foundation.
Right.
That's Linux Foundation. And Linux is still a integral, critical, foundational piece of this whole cloud native story. And I think you just made that case very eloquently. For people who want to get more information about all this, just go to canonical.com.
Microcates.io or canonical.com/Kubernetes.
Great. Hey, Alex, thanks
Thank
for
you
being
so
here
much.
on Notes. Check it out, Canonical. Those
Canonical.com.
domains, those again.
Yeah.
Canonical.com is easy,
Yep.
but the other
Microcates.io.
Microcates.io.
Yeah.
Check it out. We're going to take a break. We're still live here in Detroit. We'll be back in a moment. Hey everyone, we're back live in Detroit for KubeCon. This is our day 3 coverage. I'm happy to be joined. So this gentleman here I know from my security days. We probably know each other longer than we both want to admit. But at least 15, maybe more years. His name's Paul Stamp. Paul, welcome.
Hi, how are you, Alan? It's
Good to see you, my friend.
Yes.
So look, you're with Cato, right? We're going to talk about that, but before we do, I already said, how do we know each other? So you got to talk a little bit about your background.
Sure, yeah. So, I've been in security for about 25 years.
Yeah, every bit.
Yeah. I started off as a security consultant, and then one day I answered an ad in the Boston Globe to be an analyst for Forrester. So, I was an analyst for Forrester for a couple of years, then kind of spent some time at RSA, and then there was a little bit of time at AWS, and then since then I've just kind of been doing smaller companies, kind of doing security things, security product management at smaller companies. It's been a great ride. I've really enjoyed it.
It certainly has. And I think I don't know if you were at Forrester when I originally met you.
I think I was. Yeah, I got to meet a lot of people in that job. It was great.
But we've stayed in touch all through the years, and now lo and behold, we're both here at KubeCon,
Indeed.
Cloud Native.
Indeed.
You're with the company. It's called Cato.
That's right.
So share.
Sure. So Cato, we do automated incident response, security incident response for cloud workloads. So, you've got your XDR or you've got your intrusion detections or your SIMs that will trigger off an alert. What we do is we automatically fire off the process of acquiring the workload, whether it be a VM, a container, a serverless function. We'll do, we'll get whatever data we can, whether it be logs, we'll do a full disk acquisition, memory, and we'll automate the entire process of what an analyst would do, of going through that and then presenting back to the customer, to the user, what we think went wrong. Was this a false positive? If it wasn't a false positive, when did we start to see this activity? What do we think is actually going on here?
Excellent.
And then for the people that really want to dive in and do more of that, we've got kind of forensic level detail about what actually went on that system. So
how do people engage?
Sure. So we've got a couple of types of people. We've got the folks that the traditional incident responders, the traditional folks that don't want to use the desktop tools anymore because we run in the cloud ourselves. Then we're able to take advantage of all the parallel processing and all that stuff. And then you've got the other folks who are really reimagining how they do security operations. Right? They're not going out and hiring your traditional analysts. They're going out and they're hiring engineers to instrument every step of the process and ruthlessly automate every step of the process. And that's really where
that's what Cloud Native and the whole DevOps thing and the whole thing is about. So that's great. What about the show here? What's your impression?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting that this is very much a developer show.
Yes, it is.
Very much a developer show. But the days of the security team kind of being in their ivory tower and out there are gone. Every developer is really
responsible for security.
I mean, because as well, if they don't do that, then something's going to happen where they're taken away from developing new features to go and fix security bugs or deal with security incidents, and they have a responsibility to do that, and they want to make sure that they're maximizing their time, so they're doing it right first time, right from the beginning, which is really interesting for folks like you and me that have been in the security space for a long time.
This is what attracted me to the whole. It's why I started DevOps.com 8 years ago. Paul, we're short on time. For people who want to get information about Cato, where do they go?
So CatoSecurity.com is a great place.
CADO.
That's right.
Security.com.
That's right.
Hey man, are you going to be at RSA?
Of course.
I'll see you there in April.
Thanks a lot. Cheers then. Bye-bye.
Paul Stamp, Cato Security. If he's with this company, it's a good deal. Go check it out. We're going to take a really quick break. We've got a lot of people waiting. We've got a lot to bring to you today here from KubeCon Detroit. We'll be back in a moment. I'm sorry, let's take a break. Hi everyone, we're back here live in Detroit for KubeCon Day 3. I'm really happy to have Tim Banks from Dell Technologies here. You may be saying, hey, what's Dell doing with cloud native and Kubernetes and this? Tim's going to tell us all about it after he tells us a little bit about himself. Hey Tim, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
We're happy to have you. So, Tim, you heard I set it up for you, man.
You did. So I'm Tim. I've been in the industry for about 25 years now, starting off in operations way back when you had your infrastructure as code was just a zip file that you FTP from server to server.
We called them sysadmins.
Yep. So I was a sysadmin through back in the day. When infrastructure as code came out, virtualization became a thing. I moved into more of those types of roles. Moving on through various industries, whether it was startups, whether it was defense, whether it was Fortune 10 companies, and after a long sort of history as a frontline engineer, I moved into more of a consultative or architect roles, doing stints with AWS, with Equinix, and now I'm with Dell.
Excellent, man. So there's there's got to be 100, 150 booths here on the floor.
Easily.
People can't see because they just see this background. Not many of them are Dell class, right? Yeah. A lot of startups, there's some big ones, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
There's some really big companies, especially up front where Dell is. Mm-hmm. But what's Dell Technologies doing here at KubeCon?
So it's funny that you mentioned that. So no one thinks of Dell when they think of cloud computing. I'll be very honest about that. Mm-hmm. Dell is the laptop that your finance person uses, right? Yep. It's the desktop that you had in college, maybe. Yep. And there's a lot of enterprise use of Dell. Dell is the backbone for a lot of things that we rely on, but nobody knows about it. Especially when we're talking about the context of cloud computing, cloud native computing, open source, and especially Kubernetes, right? The thing is that Dell has been doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes in Kubernetes to enable some of the enterprises that we use to kind of put their foot in that realm. But as far as being at the forefront of that movement, we haven't been there, and I'm here to change that. So Dell is ramping up its developer relations program. We're ramping up our evangelism program. We got a lot of smart people at Dell, and people need to know about that.
Absolutely. Well, and the other thing is, quite frankly, where the hypervisor kind of, opened the floodgates. That was like the opening of the highways into the cloud, right?
Yeah.
There's an interesting kind of reverse play with Kubernetes in that you can run Kube on bare metal. Right, and now you don't have to necessarily run it at Amazon or Google or Microsoft. You can run it in your own data centers on bare metal, and that kind of probably lends itself.
And it's interesting, there's been this move from the art of the possible with cloud and everyone jumping on because you can do all of these things to more like a realization of the art of the practical. And the cloud hypervisors have known this, and that's why you're seeing things like Google Anthos and AWS Outposts and EKS Anywhere, because they're recognizing that there is starting to be a movement of folks who want to be more in control, whether it's for compliance reasons, hardware specifications, or maybe they just want to have more predictable costs. And at Dell, we want to help folks in that role. We're not trying to say, don't use cloud hypervisors. No, we understand that that's a reality, that you're going to be using that. We want to enable folks that if you decide you want to run your own hardware, for whatever reason it is, to make that as easy as possible and to keep that cloud experience that you've had consistent across whatever environment you happen to operate in. And there are a lot of legitimate reasons to run your own hardware, whether you have specific hardware needs, whether you have specific availability needs, or whether you maybe don't like paying a lot for network egress and you want to be a little more control of that. There's a lot of good reasons to do it. We're not
Absolutely.
We don't want to prescribe how you do it. We just want to make it
No, I get it, man. Is this your first KubeCon, or you've been coming for a while?
I've come to one other KubeCon as an engineer many moons ago, but this is my first one.
What's your impression?
I am really impressed with how well organized it is.
They do a nice job.
It is, things from getting people in, making sure your stickers are done.
Look, in a post-COVID world, it's a whole different game.
Oh yeah.
No doubt.
And I haven't seen the big lines, I haven't seen the big backups, no bottlenecks. It's been really, really thoughtful about how they do
everything's spread out, so you don't realize how dense, it's less dense.
Yeah.
You don't realize how many people are here.
Yeah, it's just so well run, and I am very, very impressed. And it kind of speaks to, I feel like, what the community is they're always looking for ways to improve upon themselves.
Absolutely. And what about people coming to the Dell booth? What are you hearing from
Oh,
them?
the first thing I hear is always like, what are you guys doing here?
Okay.
You know, and it's a legitimate question. If I was not with Dell, I would ask, what are you guys doing here? And that the cool part is that we get to tell them. We get to say, like, we're here to show you what we can do, and we want to find out from you what you need us to do. And that's the most important part of us being here. It's not for us to tell you about Dell, for you to tell us what you need from Dell.
Absolutely. So Tim, we got about 10,000 people watching this today.
All
No
right.
kidding.
Oh, wow.
Where can they go to find out about kind of the stuff you've been talking about? Not just about buying a laptop.
Yeah. The
Where
place
did they-
they want to go is developer.dell.com. Developer.dell.com is where our community is going to
Take
be
on
pinpointed.
camera and tell them, Tim.
Oh, this one.
No, this one,
Okay.
that one.
So developer.dell.com is where we're trying to funnel the community into. We want folks to go there. We're working on that site. There's going to be some changes going in. We're going to have more community things like a Discord, a Slack, really usable forums. We're going to be looking to be on YouTube, Twitch, more Twitter interaction. Where we want to meet you wherever you are, but just come talk to us wherever you see us.
Hey, hopefully we'll have you on Techstrong TV. 'Cause that's our community.
I would love that.
We'll make it happen.
Awesome.
All right, hey, we're live in Detroit. Dell Technologies is here. You know how real this is. Go to developer.dell.com, check it out more. Hopefully Tim will join us, maybe not live at events, but on Techstrong TV, and we
that'd be
can
great.
find out more about what Dell's doing. We're going to take a break. We're going to be back with our next guest here, wrapping up day 3. Stay tuned. Yeah, I don't even have a card with me. Hey everyone, welcome back here. We're in Detroit on our day 3 coverage from KubeCon, Cloud Native Con. This guy sitting here next to me really needs no introduction to our audience. I try to get him on as often as I can in between airplanes, right? Because he's always on an airplane somewhere. But say hello to Steve Chin. Steve's VP with JFrog. And Steve, welcome to Detroit.
This
It's Friday, it must be Detroit.
Yeah, it must be Detroit. No, this has been awesome. I think that KubeCon, like always, is kind of this centerpiece conference for the whole developer and cloud native community. And this is the biggest one post-COVID. Like, it's huge.
It is. So it's hard to tell that because it's a really big convention center with a lot of floors and rooms. B, the hall itself, as usual, the Linux Foundation, very savvy and very conscious of COVID, has done a good job of spreading things out.
Yeah,
You don't
yeah.
get
They
density.
space out the booths, they
Yeah.
space out the sessions. So
It's
I
not
think
very dense.
all the right people are here. It's an amazing crowd.
Absolutely. But I will tell you, I thought Valencia was a pretty big show as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
So
think
I
this
think
is a little bigger than Valencia.
this is bigger. What we've seen, little side, on conferences in general is like EMEA conferences. So ones we've done in Stockholm, London, Paris, like you name it. Like people are just ready to come out. They're ready to engage, and they really want to do in-person events.
Yes.
In the U.S., we're a little slower to come back, and maybe it's travel, maybe it's people.
I don't think it's a question of necessarily being afraid of COVID. I think people are so used to working at home in their pajamas and so forth that to get them out of their house for a work-related, if you told them we were partying, different story.
That's very true.
There
Actually,
is some of that.
The thing which still is really slow is I run a meetup as well, and if people aren't in the office during the day, they're not
running
skipping
out.
dinner and running out to go
No.
to a meetup. So
You know, they got to get dressed. If you want to do your hair, your makeup, whatever. But it is what it is. Anyway, let's talk a little bit about news out of JFrog. You know, I saw this when I was out in Israel for Yalla, and you and I have spoken several times since then, is focus on security. Now, interestingly, here in KubeCon, I will tell you that we've probably done 30-something interviews in the last couple days. More than half have had clearly security is job one. JFrog, through some acquisitions and development, come out with some new, security-centric products. You and I have spoken about this. Look, developers are the new attack surface, right, for security
Exactly.
attacks.
Yeah,
And
I think so. If developers are the new target for security attacks, then now security, which has traditionally been done by security teams, CISOs, like other organizations, now security has actually become the number one job of the DevOps team.
Yep.
They run the infrastructure, they run the CI/CD, they do the deployments. Like all of the development teams rely on them for centralized shared infrastructure to release and deploy. And if you're not securing at that bottleneck, then you're letting a lot of vulnerabilities, you're letting a lot of issues go out into production. So I think that all of our customers, all the top companies are using JFrog platform. They're asking us to do more with security, and we acquired Vdoo,
yes,
which was a really strong security company. They had a great product. They do excellent security research, and we brought all that security research talent, that expertise, and just announced a new offering, which is our advanced security.
yes.
And I think it solves a bunch of problems which people are talking about, but don't actually have a solution for today.
But let's talk about these problems. What are the problems?
So, everybody in the security space, they're like, okay, we can scan source code, we can scan your libraries and dependencies, we can tell you if you have any 0 days. So that's kind of table stakes.
Yeah.
But the biggest issue when you talk to people about their security infrastructure is the number of false positives. It's like 95% of the security issues reported don't relate to your application.
Yep.
And if
That's not new in security, by the way.
Well, it's becoming a more visible problem now that development teams care about it.
Mm-hmm.
DevOps team, you have things like the HR 7900 bill, which are the government's requiring companies
Yes.
to make sure they're not releasing code with known vulnerabilities, and that's a big problem when you have to filter through all of these inapplicable CVs, explain why they're not applicable, and justify that to then even sell your software to other people like the government, or know that you're deploying software which is not full of vulnerabilities.
Yep.
So that's one of the big things we did with our new security release was contextual analysis.
Okay.
So it doesn't just tell you the severity of the issues. When it scans your Docker container, it'll tell you, high severity, medium, low, but it will also tell you applicable or non-applicable. And it does this by looking at the usage, the other calls to that library in your code base. And if, for example, there's an API which you would have to call for you to be vulnerable to this security exploit, if it discovers that none of your other libraries call that API, then not applicable. You don't have to worry about it. And that gets a lot of the work out of meeting security standards.
So I have a couple. First, a real quick question, then comment. Will that satisfy the new bills in terms of, so in other words, if the JFrog product labels it not applicable, you've applied.
Yeah. So you can generate a report.
And that will be sufficient.
It has all the information about why it's not applicable, exactly how it did the scan, and like that's the sort of justification which you don't have to manually do anymore, and you shouldn't have to manually do, because if you're releasing continuously, if you're pushing out constant updates to your software and getting new security scans with thousands of issues, you're going to spend all your time justifying why things aren't security issues, which should be an automated task.
Absolutely. So now, I had a friend, Giddy Cohen. I don't know if you know Giddy. Do you know Giddy Cohen? Giddy started a company 15 years ago, Skynet Security. And what he used to do was generate what we call the attack maps, right? So very similar, this is before Coop, right?
Yeah.
So we scan your infrastructure, we find your vulnerabilities, then we say, it's more than just having a vulnerability. What's the severity? Is it reachable? Is it exploitable? When I sit here and hear cloud native people talk about security scanning like they invented it,
Yeah, so
I was doing scanning in 2002.
Yeah, they're not doing that. So
yeah, well, I hear you.
That's the problem.
So when for this advanced security, so looking at APIs and what's called that, that's a very similar or parallel kind of thing.
There's also a whole bunch of things which, especially when you talk about cloud native applications, which are very unique. So Docker containers typically have a lot of exposed secrets with like API keys and things inside of them. You're using Terraform or other infrastructure files to do your deployments.
Yep.
And all of those also expose security risks, and they're not code. They're not
No, they're not necessarily vulnerabilities in terms of bugs or whatever. They're configuration issues.
Exactly. And that's the other thing
and
we
I don't
added
want to
with
say
advanced security.
configuration errors, they're issues.
No, they're security issues in your configuration. Security issues with your company secrets being exposed via Docker images, and we also scan and check for those in the advanced security.
You do.
Yeah.
And then the scanning, when is that done? Like, is it on demand? Is it automatic? Is it continuous? All of the above?
So, I mean, one of the good things is if you think about the flow of releases from, you develop it, you build it, you package it, you deploy it. So we're right in the center with the JFrog platform, right? So Artifactory is the database of DevOps. So when you're pushing things into Artifactory, it automatically scans them. You can set rules and filters on that. And also using build info, which tells you, or release info, which tells you where your packages are released. Mm-hmm. You can also know if there's a new 0 day, what are all the affected systems in production.
That's great. Because that's another thing I'm hearing from my security friends is all this focus on so-called shift left security is coming at the expense. You can't ignore. There's a big world out there post deployment.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. Like when Log4Shell happens, everyone was scrambling to figure out which systems were affected.
Where do I have it? Right.
Like you didn't have it unless you had a system like the JFrog platform, which cataloged everything. You don't know that. And the the second problem was, are you even vulnerable? And if you were just using the core Log4j APIs, you weren't. So even though it was a widespread attack, people were patching and updating a lot of systems which weren't actually impacted by the Log4Shell exploit.
No doubt. Now look, there's a school of thought says if that's what it took to get them to patch some systems, it's not a terrible thing. It's not a total loss, as they say. But it is what it is. This is part of the JFrog platform. I'm going to put you on the spot. It doesn't cost extra money?
Of course it does.
Okay, that's what we... Give me an idea. How's it priced?
So basically, we have our different tiers: Enterprise, Enterprise Plus for the large accounts, and the JFrog Advanced Security is an add-on for either of those tiers. So
it is.
If you're an Enterprise or Enterprise Plus customer, you can.
So how is it based upon how many developers, how many scans, how do you?
Yeah. So on the security side, typically our pricing model, we don't do a user-based pricing model.
Okay.
We think that punishes big DevOps
Yeah, no,
teams.
I mean people out here are interested. So
Yeah. So we do on the platform side, we do it by servers.
Okay.
And then for the security solution, advanced security, it's you get a certain number of scans and
Scans.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I mean, that's the logical place if
Exactly.
you're going to measure stuff. It's available now.
Yep, available now, all the features we talked about, and it's things which, like if you saw the Google security announcement, other folks are talking about it, but they don't have it.
Yeah, no, this is, look, as I said, I see so many parallels to the development of the vulnerability management and then application scanning markets that I've seen over the last 25 years. Hopefully we'll learn from that and this will come faster, better.
Yeah, no, I
for
think
people.
it's an important area, and I mean the other thing I'll just briefly mention that we're making big investments in is that, all we've talked about a lot of enterprise security, like how you secure your corporate pipeline, but there's a big issue with open source and making sure that you're not relying upon vulnerable open source libraries, and frankly for the open source projects to have a secure, reliable distribution system. And so we just announced a new effort that's going to be an incubating CDF project, CD Foundation, called Persia.
Oh, yes, okay. Hence the shirt.
Oh,
Take a
yeah,
look
that's
here.
sure.
Actually, that camera, okay.
And it's a secure, decentralized way for open source projects to distribute their libraries. So
Absolutely.
collaborating with other companies, making sure it's vendor neutral as part of the CDF, and using next generation technologies like peer-to-peer networks, immutable transaction ledgers so that you have something to base your SBOMs on, and just providing this as a free service to the open source community.
That's great. Actually, so we had Lori on, from CDF, well, from JFrog too. And we actually spoke about it a little bit yesterday. And I think we're going to have some more Persia discussion shortly. So we'll tell you more about Persia with our next guest. But Steve, I want to thank you for coming on. It's always good to see you. Where are you headed next?
I get a week break, which is
week.
the most time I've had not traveling in the
for
past
you.
couple of months.
I'm actually home for a week and then Vegas myself. So
Yeah, and then I'm doing the Linux Foundation Member Summit
Oh yeah.
in Tahoe.
And then will you be at reInvent?
Yep, reInvent as well.
We're doing videos there. We'll hook up then.
Cool.
All right. Steve Chin, JFrog, about Persia, about advanced security. You know what, Stephen? Where do they go to get information about this?
I mean, you can jfrog.com
Just
or
jfrog.com?
Persia.io.
Or Persia.io. JFrog.com, they'll be able to get to the advanced security stuff? Okay. Steve Chin from JFrog here. We're going to take a break. We're going to have some more news or some more discussion on Persia in just a minute or two. Let us rejig the set. We're live in Detroit. Stand by. Cool.
Good.
He's going to come in. Hey everyone, we're back. We're back here in Detroit. We're wrapping up. Today is our last day of coverage. We hope you've enjoyed 3 days here, trying to give you just a little flavor of what's been going on at KubeCon, talking to a lot of CNCF folks and CDF folks as well, and just people in the cloud native community, a lot of the vendors. My next guest is Suhindra Rao. Suhindra is with JFrog, much like our previous guest, Steve Chin. Steve started talking about Persia.
Yep.
Lori and I from CDF spoke about Persia yesterday. But Suhindra, we're going to put you on the spot here. We're going to make you do the Persia deep
Sure
dive.
thing.
First of all, though, thank you, and it's a pleasure to meet you.
It's a pleasure as well.
Before we jump into Persia, let's talk, if you don't mind, sharing with our audience a little bit of your story.
Yeah. So I started 20 years ago now. Did all kinds of traditional software development. Did a lot of open source back in the day. Did Java, Ruby, all kinds of languages. Most recently, before JFrog, I actually did some CNCF projects. Worked with Cloud Foundry. Built the VMware Tanzu platform, and sort of have some interaction with the Kubernetes community, right? And now when I came to JFrog, I was doing more of that, and that's where we started talking about how open source works, how people trust open source, and what are the parameters they use. And that's where we found an opportunity to actually start a fresh project called Persia. That's what we are going to talk about today.
Absolutely. Thank you for laying that out. So, make believe Steve didn't say anything. If my audience out here doesn't know anything about Persia.
Yeah. Let me start with how we build our open source and how we trust it. Today we just look at an open source project and say, oh, this has the most downloads and most GitHub stars, and I know this person who built it, and that's our trust vector, right? And we just download it, use it, and then curse ourselves when you see a vulnerability or an attack happens, right? And it's mostly after the fact. And what we are looking at is trying to bring more trust that doesn't depend on all these fluff things as we were talking about, and try to trust what is in the code base, right? And that's where Persia comes in. Persia is an open source distributed package network, which allows you to build packages from scratch and have a trust mechanism that builds on top of that. You can verify how the builds were done. You know who did those builds. You can sign those packages using Sigstore or whatever your sign-in mechanism is, and still have a resilient, dependable network where you can always have those packages available. So you don't have to worry about if NPM is down or whatever. You can still continue delivering production quality software. And as the package stays on the network and the vulnerability is discovered, all that information is on the network. So you can just query that, make release decisions on that.
I love it. Now, Persia was kind of conceived and built by JFrog, but it was donated to the CDF.
Yes, that happened like yesterday or day before on the CD Summit day on Tuesday. So I got a prop here which talks a little bit about it. Yeah.
You're going to use it. Hold it up there.
Yeah,
now let's talk about what does that mean?
What does that mean? Actually, so from day one, we believed that anything that we have to do with open source has to be community owned. It cannot be owned by one company, and one company can't be held responsible to maintain it and be burdened with it. Not just that, it is too much power given to that one company. So we always started with the thought in mind that how do we make it community driven. So when we actually had our initial discussions with Linux Foundation, the idea was to bring partners along and have it like a group. So we have Deploy Hub, we have Docker, we have FutureWave, we have Oracle actually partnering with us, distributing the Persia network across different clouds and bringing it up and maintaining it as a community. And what we announced on Tuesday was our official incubation with CDF. Now that we are part of CDF, we have the force of CDF behind us to sort of attract contributors, to sort of use that platform to promote what we are doing. And the talk that I did at CDF Summit Day was how does this matter for continuous delivery? Like, the security is the aspect that we have been ignoring. We have been talking about tools, but it is about securing your software even before you start using it. That's where the partnership comes in.
Love it. And look, we've interviewed a lot of people from a lot of different projects. We spent a lot of time this week talking about sandbox, incubation, graduation. What are the different levels of open source projects within this kind of Linux Foundation model? For people out there who say, hey, this sounds great, not only do I want to play with it, but I may want to get involved. What's the best way you think?
The best way is to find us on on our website, Persia.io. Very simple to remember. And at the footer of our website are all our links. We have a Google group, we have a Slack channel. It is all open. We also have meetings that happen every 2 weeks where we encourage community members to come and chat with us, see if they're interested, and we'll get them in and start contributing. And they don't have to contribute code. We need people who are ready to test, try it out, break it.
That's exactly, because you know what? Look, I've been involved in open source for a long time. Most open source projects have 100, 200. That's a great project.
Great project,
If you have 200 contributors of code. But those aren't the only roles. You don't have to contribute code. Play with it, break it, ask for new features.
Ask for new features. Come to our meeting.
That's what makes these great communities.
And have a conversation. Maybe we are doing things wrong. Who knows?
Yeah.
Bring that perspective to us. We have had people coming from all, like there are researchers coming to our meetings. There are people from working in cryptocurrency coming to our meetings saying, what are you guys doing? Why are you using blockchain? Let me hear about it. And they're like, oh, I didn't know that this use case existed.
I agree.
Right?
I agree.
So we are trying to break new grounds, and you can help us with that.
Here's something specific to Persia too I'd like you to address. There are going to be people out here who say, well, I'm a developer. This is a security. But this is really security for developers.
Yes.
So if you're a developer, you should be involved. Vice versa, there are going to be people out here who are security people. Who say, this is really security for developers.
No, this is not just for developers. Actually,
and it's not just for security.
It's not just for security either. It's for both ends, meaning while developing, you want this information about whether are you using an open source binary that has some security issues, right? As a security person, you want to know what happened to those binaries, how insecure they are, or what vulnerabilities exist. So Persia actually has a provenance log, which you can query, you can write automation, you can fail builds, you can stop releases, you can push stuff to production if you have an exceptional scenario, right? So it gives all the tools for you to operate in both areas, right? And do security first or security last, because we know that it needs to go along the chain, not just, we just verified it when we were doing development and then forget about it.
Exactly. All right. Persia, Pyrsia .io.
Persia, Pyrsia.io.
Hey, it's part of CDF. If you're a developer looking to get smart about security, between what Sudhindra said and Steve before him said, this might be really something you want to check into. For your security guy looking to help your development and DevOps teams, great project. Check it out. That's a wrap here in Detroit. We will be ready in just one moment. Oh no, I don't mean for the day. I mean that for this. We'll be back in a moment here, continuing our coverage. Excellent. everyone. We're back here in Detroit. We're live, and it's KubeCon, Cloud Native Con. And, you know, what people don't get about Cloud Native or Computing Foundation, the Linux Foundation model, is it is truly a community. And in community, we have old people, young people, and it's everybody's mission to get educated and learn. And one of the cool things they've done this year is Kids Day at Cloud Native Con, KubeCon. I want to introduce you to Cassandra Chin, who is going to tell us all about it and her involvement in it. Cassandra, welcome to Techstrong TV.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm Cassandra.
Cassandra?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm the instructor for the Kids Day event,
Okay.
and for this event I teach the Pokemon workshop.
Really?
So for the Pokemon workshop, we use Raspberry Pis.
Mm-hmm.
Raspberry Pis are about this big, and attached to the Raspberry Pi is about a 5-inch touchscreen.
Okay.
I like it because it's indestructible. We can use it so many times.
So our audience is pretty technical. A lot of them have Raspberry Pis,
Oh.
and they're using them for all kinds of things. Some so good, some not. But who's the audience for your Kids Day?
I teach they're about 10 years old, maybe for a wider range, 8 to 16.
Mm-hmm.
Depends workshop per workshop.
And I mean, so I imagine if it's Raspberry Pi with a touchscreen, we're running Linux. What kind of things are you teaching them? Like basic commands or?
So with the Raspberry Pi, we start by throwing them into a game. It's written in Java.
Okay.
And so we let them wander through the game and essentially lose the game on their own.
Uh-huh.
So we have to give them tools to help them win the game. So we give them little sensors. There's a button, a light sensor, and an accelerometer.
Mm-hmm.
So when we give them the button, they have to follow the wiring diagram to wire it up. So we use a breadboard, and they have to wire that into the Raspberry Pi.
Excellent. Now, these children, how do they, a child's watching this, or someone wants to have their child participate in the next one. How do they join this?
I'm hoping there will be good marketing around it.
I mean, is there a website we could go to? Is it the Cloud Native site maybe, or
Most likely.
CNCF?
Should be a site affiliated with this conference.
And what other conferences have you done this at?
I've taught at DevOps Morocco. This was this month earlier.
Yes.
And during the summer, I taught in Crete. Crete it's like a small island in Greece.
Yes, I've been there. What about DevOps in Europe coming up in April is Amsterdam. Are you planning on that?
Yeah,
or
I'll
not?
be there teaching the workshop.
You will be.
Yeah. I plan on doing a new theme. So instead of Pokemon, I want to do the little, what's it called, Fippy and Friends.
Yeah, okay. Well, look, you would know better than me, but I've heard of them.
I think it's good marketing for the conference. Plus, they're cute.
Excellent. Anything else you want to say to the audience?
So for the actual kids workshop, I mentioned that they have to wire the button, but we also make them code. The button won't work unless they add the line of code. So,
I knew there had to be some coding in there somewhere.
yeah.
Very
So what I
cool.
really like about the workshop is the kids literally have to open Nano on the Raspberry Pi and add a line of code. They can't get anywhere without doing that.
And
No
that's
box
important.
coding. It's
Beautiful.
real.
Excellent. So they're learning something. It's not just all fun and games. Cassandra, thank you so much for coming on Techstrong TV. But more importantly, thanks for doing what you're doing. It's important. It's good stuff.
Thank
Alrighty?
you for talking to me.
You're welcome. Hey, we are here in Detroit. We have another interview coming right up. We're going to take a break. We'll be back in a minute. Hey everyone, we're back here. We're live in Detroit at KubeCon, wrapping up our third day of coverage. You know, I think this might be our last interview for KubeCon Detroit. It'll be a wrap. I think we've probably done something like 40 interviews in 3 days, 40 something. So we hope you've enjoyed it. From what I'm told from our production staff, we've had tens of thousands of people view it over the 3 days. It's crazy. At 11,000, I know, yesterday. And more than 11,000. So we hope you've enjoyed it. Our last guest is Matt Peters. He's with a company called Expel. And Matt, first of all, welcome to Techstrong TV. You've never done this before.
Oh, no. It's great to be here.
Well, we haven't lost, in 3 days, we haven't lost one yet. So
Okay, good.
chances are good you'll be okay.
I'll make through it.
But Matt, why don't we, give people a little background. Who are you? What do you do?
Yeah. So I am the Chief Product Officer at Expel. We are a managed detection and response provider. I've been doing security work for about 25 years, getting my start building appliances and actually writing software, and then went into incident response. I worked at Mandiant, helping out with their managed service. And then after that, after the acquisition by FireEye, a couple guys and I went out and we decided to help out the industry and founded Expel, where we do detection and response and sort of managed security.
So is it endpoint detection and response, or just?
It's a great question. So when we started the company, the theory that we had been doing, I think, nation-state focused response, and so you think like that's primarily endpoint based, but we had a network sensor as well, and the light bulb went off for us that if you're really responding to actors that know what they're doing or real threats, having a lot of different telemetry is much more useful than having a particular, like a single thing. So, endpoint's great data, and I would love to have it, but also being able to look at network signal and things like this. So when we started, we said it would be great if we could give the defenders access to all these different telemetries in a way that isn't overloading. So one of the reasons a lot of teams will focus on endpoint or their SIM or something like this is it's just a lot of cognitive load to think about, like, okay, well here I'm in my SIM, I'm looking at these logs, now let me pivot over and let me look at the endpoint, things like this. What we said was, we think that we can do this high quality forensic response, so like really getting into the what, when, why, and how of a breach, but we can do it across a disparate technology stack, and the way you do that is you build a sort of a technology layer that helps normalize some of that, helps you respond, and that's sort of the core behind Expel.
Love it. How long has Expel been in business?
So we just crossed over our 6th year, which is crazy to think. So
wow.
The 3 founders had the idea about 6 years ago, and built the initial team. We've been selling ever since, and we're about to cross over 500 employees, which just blows my mind. It's like, I was employee number 1, so it just freaks me out whenever I see it.
Yeah, no, I've been through that. It's crazy feeling.
New York
right?
growth, yeah.
But, there comes a point where, you start a company, and there's books written about this. Right? That initial stages were all family, right? I know everyone, and especially if you're a co-founder, they're your family, right? You treat them, and then you start hiring employees, and they're employees, but you know everyone, and you know everyone's story. Oh yeah, that's Matt. Yeah. Matt has 2 kids. Matt, blah blah blah. Then you start. The next stage, maybe 100, 150 people. You probably still know everyone's name, and you think you know what department they're in, but you really, especially in this day with remote, you don't really know a lot about them other than, he's in product management or something. Then you get to about 300, 400, 500, and you know what? You don't know everyone's name anymore. It's hard. People come, people go, So it's a very interesting. It kind of, it's the circle of life. What can I tell you? Let's talk. What do you do? What are you guys doing here at Cloud Native Con, KubeCon?
Yeah, so one of the things that we've been doing is, we started out protecting sort of traditional infrastructure, think desktops, laptops, servers, that kind of stuff. And over the last couple of years, we've expanded, and we've got a cloud offering where we'll protect people's cloud infrastructure, because that was where a lot of the risk was moving. And then a couple of years ago, we started seeing the first set of customers beginning to adopt Kubernetes as a place where they really run production infrastructure. And so we looked at it, we're like, there's something that we can can do there, because the number one thing that we identified, and this is going back to the initial founders at Expel, really saw the security problem, and they said, the real issue here is not necessarily a technology one, it's a people problem, right? It's having enough skilled people to be able to do detection response, this sort of stuff, right? So what we've done is, here at KubeCon, is we're announcing our support for Kubernetes as a first-class offering, where if you're running Kubernetes in any one of the cloud-hosted services, we can go ahead and connect up and watch it for you. So if you have security incidents, someone attacks it, misconfigurations, this kind of stuff, we can help you to respond to that so that you don't have to build a 24/7 monitoring capability. Because if you're really focused on using Kubernetes for what it's for, which is like rapid deployment of software and like software at scale to help a business, you don't really want to be thinking about like, well, what happens if something goes bump at 2 o'clock in the morning, right? Because it's always 2 o'clock in the morning on like Thanksgiving that the bad one hits, right? And so that's what we do.
That is so damn true. Is this the first time you've come to KubeCon, or?
No, so actually before pandemic, I've been here several times. Really, always enjoyed it as a show because I'm a technologist at heart. So like, go to the sessions, this sort of stuff, see the technologies, that kind of thing. Obviously pandemic was a little bit of a break. So this is our first time exhibiting here. So it's been super exciting.
And so look, this is, people don't see it, they see this, but the things are spread out, it's less dense, but there's still a lot of people here. Interested in what you're hearing from the crowd about.
Sure. Yeah, so a couple of themes that I'm hearing, and then some things I'm seeing from some of the other vendors as well. One is people being concerned about risk in things like Kubernetes, but it's a little bit, I'll use the word inchoate, it's kind of unformed. It reminds me actually of going to, say, reInvent and talking about security 6-7 years ago, right? People knew that this was a problem, they knew that something was hurtling toward them, but we didn't really know what the shape of the asteroid was. And so right now what I'm seeing is I'm seeing a lot of people talk about things like OPA and configuration drift and
a lot of
stuff.
OPA.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I was just talking to my friend Steve Chin from JFrog. They came out with something called Advanced Security, which is, it's part of this developer-led, not developer-led. The developers are an attack surface at some level, right? And targeted. And how do we, I see so many parallels, so I'm also in security 25, 30 years, right? From when we were doing vulnerability scanning, 2003, 2004, to app scanning, and now the kinds of scanning we're doing as part of our CI/CD processors. As much as things change, they stay the same a little bit.
Yeah.
We want to know not only is something vulnerable, is it reachable?
Yeah.
What are the consequences? What's it connected to? What APIs is it calling? These kinds of things. So I do think, as you said, it kind of does feel a little, in terms of security anyway, like AWS before 7, 8, maybe even 10 years ago, because a message I would get out of this year's show is security is primary.
Oh yeah, well, and I think one of the things that I've seen, having been doing security for a while, is that we're facing determined adversaries, even if it's not necessarily, say, a nation-state actor. What they're going to do is they're going to target and try to find places to get in. So when there's a new technology and the potential for it to be misdeployed is really, really high, that forms a really, really good barrier. The other thing I would say is that there's kind of a complete story here too. One of the things we talked to a lot of our customers about is, let's say you're running all of your infrastructure in the cloud. That is an attack surface, absolutely, but your users are still an attack surface. So like, if I can get the credentials by phishing someone, I'm going to get them through phishing someone. So you've got to kind of think about all of the different avenues, and when there's something new, it might give you tremendous new instrumentation, as we see from something like Kubernetes and all of the different infrastructure I can use to pull signal out of it. But it's also going to potentially open up some new avenues, and the attackers are going to go where the easy is, right? So if we recall back a number of years ago, where you could basically find unpatched vulnerabilities on Windows servers connected to the internet all day, every day, right? The necessity to develop high quality other attacks was significantly lower, and you only really saw that from nation states. As people got their patching games up, we saw an increase in BEC and account takeover and that sort of stuff, because that's where we're going to go, right? As more and more people are deploying Kubernetes, if we don't handle the risk on that front, you're going to see a spike in Kubernetes until we tamp down on that, and then they're going to find a new place to go. It's like, basically, I liken it to, for opportunistic attackers, someone going down the street and testing car doors, right? When they find the open door, they're going to steal the stuff,
The way it is.
the way it is,
It
yeah.
always was. I used
Yeah.
to say it was going down the hotel
Oh yeah, the hotel,
hallway
yeah.
looking for open doors, man. People who want to get more information,
Yep.
Expel, where do they go?
Expel.com is our website. We've also got
EXPEL.
expel.com is our website, and we've got a bunch of announcements up there. We also have a blog that you can subscribe to up there, and that's where we're at. Yeah.
Cool. Hey, Matt, thanks for joining.
Thank you so much.
Alrighty. Hey, we are going to wrap our KubeCon Cloud Native Con here for Detroit 2022. We hope you've joined it. If you missed any of the days, our entire, I don't know, probably 40-something interviews will be replayed over the coming weeks on Techstrong TV. You can check it out there. You can probably catch them on demand there as well. Until then, though, Monday we will be back on Techstrong TV from Studio A back in Boca Raton. So we'll see you there. This is Alan Schimmel. We're out of here.